After working for a decade in the property finance space and funding hundreds of deals for our clients, today we're going to be looking at where I would go if I was starting from scratch and how I would go about finding my first property deal. We've got 11 points to cover over, so let's get to it. Before we start, you have to actually identify your development niche. Which sort of development project are you looking to undertake? There is 3 types. 1, refurbishment loans. These are very basic properties, just modernizing residential properties. There's conversions. This is barn conversions, office to residential, hotels, pubs, and then the hardest, or some will argue the hardest, is the full ground up development loans. These are literally, you have nothing but mud and you've got to build a house. Depending on which one you want to go down, this will depend on your actual risk appetite, where you are in your experience, and what sort of team that you have around you. Once you've decided the type of project you want to do, you want to move on to actually researching the local market. So where do you actually want to do this development project? It's generally advised to do this locally, unless you live in a very high cost of living area where properties are extremely expensive and you don't have the funds, then it might be worth looking in a cheaper area. But do remember, you're going to have to travel there, so add that into your costs. You want to be able to understand all the local markets, so the different types of properties, the sort of properties that people are actually looking for in that area, because some areas are very much owner-occupied areas, some are renters, some are students, so make sure you do your research. You want to use tools like Zoopla, Rightmove, even the land registry to analyze the properties that are on the market in that area and the trends. And finally, it's probably worth attending some local networking events and speaking to local agents before you decide what you actually want to do, because they will have some invaluable insight. And talking of the agents, it is definitely worth having a look at and seeing if you can find some property sources in that area. They might be able to find something that allows you to skip all of this research and have something on their books ready to go from the get-go. Otherwise, make sure you get in good with estate agents. One tip that a lot of clients we have and we give out: if you go to an estate agent and you want them to do anything, anytime you complete something, treat them good, buy them a little something afterwards. It makes them feel better. And when a property comes up that is below market value or a real good steal, you'll be the one they go to next, because they'll remember what you did for them. The next step to having a look at what you want is to go via online property portals and auctions. Check them regularly. I know I'm on there daily looking at Rightmove, Zoopla. You've got auction houses, Savills, Allsops, all for undervalued properties. You also can utilize land opportunities and public records. If you investigate land through sale portals like Plot Finder, the land registry to identify owners, this is a huge one that I don't think many people do, because it takes a little bit more time. If you're walking around and you find a plot that is just a nice bit of land in an area that you think a house could be built, you can actually go on to land registry, and many times you'll actually be able to find who owns the property and where they live. They will have a registered address on land registry. What you can do then is you can send a actual letter to that address saying, hey, I've come across this site. I'd be interested in purchasing this land. If you are thinking of selling it, do get in touch. And you'd be surprised how often that works. A lot of people are just sitting on things that they've had for a long time, or family members, and they're keen to get rid of them. It's also worth checking with local councils and the planning records in your area. Everything is completely available on most of the local portals. Just simply Google the county plus planning portal, and almost always that will take you directly to their website. You can search the plots. You can see plots that have expired planning that you might be able to pick up cheap and then reinstate the planning. You'll be able to find plots that have just got planning, and maybe you can skip a few steps and go and offer. They'll have the architect's details typically on who's submitted the planning. You'll be able to approach them, see if they can introduce you to the client if they're interested in selling. You've just got to do the work for these sort of things. Talking of planning, one area that a lot of people overlook is what are called regeneration areas. A lot of the councils will put together a plan or a proposal to actually regenerate certain areas. And if one of those is nearby to where you're looking to build, it's often a very good sign, because it actually means they're more inclined to grant planning permission. So when you are looking to sort of purchase just a plot of land, you can actually check to see whether that plot of land is actually included within that zoned planning. And the zones can be for residential, for commercial, and that will help you decide what you can actually build in that area. 7th thing that I would suggest doing is actually marketing and networking directly with people. If you're walking down the street and you see a house that maybe needs some work, literally just have some letters with you and just say, you're interested in buying this house. Pop it through the letterbox, leave your number or a contact or an email so they can get in touch with you. If they do, You just drop this to a couple of houses that you like. Hopefully one of them will pick it up. And a lot of people are sitting on houses that need a lot of repair. They might not have the money, so you might be able to structure something with them. You can also use sites like LinkedIn, local business network groups, other property groups on Facebook, developer groups. Even if you don't actually get involved, it's worth lurking in some of these because you will see a lot of useful information. And it always surprises me when I get one of our clients and they come to us and they say, oh, I actually got this property off someone from Facebook, off Reddit even. So there are lots of people actually doing a lot of business on these sort of social networking sites. The 8th thing that I would look to do is actually try find some local architects. They will very often be working for people looking to get planning, or people that have just had planning declined or planning that has come through that they weren't exactly wanting, and you might be able to pick up some good deals from them. Planning consultants, obviously same thing, brilliant idea, and I think something that a lot of people don't do. What I would suggest doing, like with everything, if you treat them good, they will most likely look after you. So potentially when you drop in, if you want to go see them in person, just bring something, a small goodie bag or something to give them, and that will get you off on the right foot, as often they've got projects that are no stalled projects or properties in prime development sites. There's also government initiatives and schemes that you can have a look at. They will often have sort of schemes like help to buy areas where you can actually go have a look. They'll have opportunity zones and areas earmarked for regeneration. Final point I'd want to make are the sorts of people, unfortunately, that need to actually sell their properties rather urgently. And this is something that you can maybe target directly. One of the main things you want to look at when you're looking to purchase a property is to try and get it undervalued. If you get a property undervalued, it actually will help maximize your profits because you haven't spent as much upfront. So in order to try and maximize your profit, you want to find people that are very keen to sell their property undervalued. There are 3 main areas where people are willing to actually sell their property undervalued, and that is death, divorce, and distress. And the distress is typically some sort of financial distress. This is where people need to get out of the property quickly. For divorce, it's fairly obvious. Couples are splitting up. They need to sell their marital home in order to split their assets. And many times they're willing to do this quickly because of obviously all the hardship involved. This allows you to come in, if their property needs some work, get it a little undervalued, do some work, get the uplift, and then sell it on to another family that likes it, or keep it as a rental. With death, it's a little morbid, but a lot of the times if a family member has just inherited the property, they do need to get rid of it quickly. Often the house will come with running costs that many people can't afford, and thus they've got an incentive to actually sell the property quite quickly. If an older person has been living there for quite a long time, it might need some work, which then gives any developer stepping in some scope to refurbish the property. And then financial distress is probably the hardest one of all, because the person that is selling is in a very tough position most of the time. Their property may have been taken off them by a receiver, they've been put into bankruptcy. What you need to do is you can approach LPA receivers. There's thousands of them across the country. They're all involved with actually selling off properties. If you can get a good relationship with one of those, or if you know somebody that's looking to sell the property because they're in financial difficulty, you can help them. And a lot of people think this is actually taking advantage, but in a lot of cases, if you can get somebody out of the sort of hole they're in rather quickly, it actually works out better for everyone. So if they take, let's say, that £100,000 property and they take 90,000, for example, they've lost 10,000, but that buys them out of that loan, which in some instances is priceless. So if I was starting again, those are the areas I would have a look at. Make sure that you do your homework, you get some good advice, you network as much as possible. Always keep on looking, as you'll never know when something comes up. There's always somebody else searching for these projects as well, so you've got to be on top of your game. If you've got any questions, do leave a comment below. Hopefully you or someone you know will be able to use this information to source your very first property. After working over a decade in the property finance space and we're going to be looking at where I would go. The main types of areas that you would, areas that you would look to develop, or no. So we'll get to that in another video. Let's try that again. That was death is another one. No, a little bit morbid, but no. So if you enjoyed this video, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do any of that. Or do we? You can tell me. about funding. No. And there we go.